Hi everyone, welcome back to the Art of Save Scumming. This is part 2, dealing with Tzeentch, and actually this was supposed to be a video on army compositions for Kairos' faction, but I looked at some of the comments from you guys in my previous video, which kind of briefly overviewed how to conduct a Kairos campaign, and there were a couple concerns about how I set my character up. And what I would like to say about that is that in that particular video, Kairos was not at max level. So some people were like, why didn't you do this or that or the other? It's because he wasn't at full level and I didn't have all my points yet. So what I thought I would do is go through how I think to set up a Kairos Fateweaver properly if you're looking for a way to get the most out of him. So in my opinion, when you look at the way the Tzeentch faction, as in the demon faction run by Kairos Fateweaver, really operates in battles, it's very heavily dependent on the cheesiness with the magic. And because of that, I think that a lot of players tend to focus very heavily on his magic line out the gate. I think that that's a mistake, because for the first probably 20 battles that you're going to fight with Kairos, you really only need the blue fire of Tzeentch and pink fire of Tzeentch. Now I'm going to throw a screenshot up from the very beginning of the campaign to show you that you start out with fully upgraded blue fire of Tzeentch, 1 point in glean magic, and 1 point in pink fire of Tzeentch. I think that because you don't need really any upgraded magic for the first 20 or so battles, that you should focus on the blue line to start with. And this is how I suggest that you spend your first several points. First one goes into Route Marcher. You're going to definitely need this if you are planning on doing the cheese where you save Sotharael and use him as bait for Teclis. You will need the extra campaign movement range. The next 3 points go into the Binding of the Wills. And the reason that is because you can see here, each one of those points gives you a reduction in turn duration for the Changing of the Ways. You're going to be using the Changing of the Ways a lot, and you're going to want that to cool down as quickly as possible. So in my opinion, spend 3 points there and then put 1 point into the Element of Surprise to give you an extra 10% on your ambush success rate. Really not looking to care a whole lot about ambushing various armies, but when you're going through Lustria, it is really nice, or I suppose the Southern Jungle as well. It's very nice to be able to hide that army and strike when you want with your teleport stance. Next point, put into Lightning Strike. We don't really care about Lightning Strike in this instance, but it is the ligating point between the first half of the blue line to the second part of the blue line. Then we're going to spend 3 points in Casualty Replenishment for Legions of Madness. Kairos has really crappy casualty replenishment, so you're going to want as much as you can get. And then we spend 1 point into Scrolls of Destiny. We always need more Grimoires. This isn't the best expenditure, but I think that when we compare it to the other things we have access to, I don't really use faction intentions, reveal faction intentions very much. I also can't really be bothered for a 3% upkeep reduction, because there are other ways to reduce the upkeep, and really you're going to be floating in money anyway. So I'm saying get that Grimoire and then spend our last point on the upkeep reduction and various other things, campaign movement range, etc., and Renowned and Feared. Now here, by my count, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 points spent. We're not quite at his unique line. So from here, I think you start spending up here. Hidden in Time gives you stock and gets you behind the enemy lines, so you can start spamming magic into their back. Obviously, missile resistance is always a problem with a huge target like Kairos, and this one's really good because it gives you 3 uses of a stop any unit on the map type thing. By the time you finish those, you should have access to his unique line, and you can either start spending in the unique line or the magic line. Now, in my opinion, it doesn't really matter which way you go. Again, because the first 20 points, you don't really need up into the magic area quite yet. But there's some really good stuff in here, so I went with the unique line. Go through them real quick. Damage resistance 44% when active. My goodness gracious. Miscast base chance and wins. Barrier replenishment delay and replenishment rate. Winds of magic power reserve and physical resistance. Barrier 20% for Lords of Change. I don't really use the Lords of Change that much, but the Winds of Magic cost minus 15% for Lore of Tzeentch spells. Very important. And then, of course, barrier plus 20% during battles for your entire army. And depending on how you've set up your army with your various single entities, this one might be important to you. Magic. We've put the second point into the Pink Fire of Tzeentch to upgrade it, and we've got the Lore passive. It's going to give us access to Prismatic Plurality, and then we're going to get into our advanced magic. Now, depending on which fragments you tend to pick up, you're going to want to pay attention to what you're spending points on here. Obviously, the two give-me's are going to be Magic Reserves and Earthing. Back to those fragments. When you spend 2 points in any fragment, you get the Lore passive, and you get the spells associated with it. So this grants a healing spell and a melee damage reflection 14. So that's pretty good. And then the, it's regrowth, wherever it is. So small on my screen, I can't find it. Regrowth, right there. This fragment, the Fragment of Shaiish, is going to give you the Lore passive after you spend 2 points on it, the Lore passive of reserves per second. This was the site of controversy at the very beginning of Warhammer 3 because this basically gave you unlimited winds of magic. You don't have unlimited winds of magic. Well, excuse me. You kind of do, but it's really slow. It's not quite as overpowered as it once was. These Lore passives that we're talking about stick to the character, so it doesn't matter whether you're using them actively or not. You still get the Lore passive. For instance, you can see here he has the Fragment of Giron equipped, but if we go back to the skills, you can find that he still has Life Leeching in his skill tree. He has the Life Bloom right next to it, and if we switch those around, Fragment of Shaiish, back to the skills, and we look here, he still has, of course, Life Leeching, but Life Bloom is there, but instead he has the Fate of Bajuna, which is an excellent direct damage spell, as well as the Purple Sun of Xarius, which is an okay damage dealing vortex. After you've completed everything that we've talked about up to this point, it's time to start considering either going after a whole bunch of those Lore passives or boosting the army. I've chosen to boost the army. Generally, the army isn't that important though, especially when it comes to Kairos, because the way that you're basically going to do this is you're going to set your army up in defense, and then you're going to fly Kairos out in front, spam a whole bunch of magic, do as much damage as you possibly can with him and the army abilities that you're going to have, that you unlock through the technology tree, and then you're going to use the army as cleanup. But I've decided to run an okay army in this one, and in this case I've gone with Horrors and Flamers. This gives you extra defense and leadership, more stuff for the Horrors, and then this replaces that, so you end up with +8 in both categories. After that, you only have a couple points left to spend, and I suggest grabbing 3 points in Mentor, especially because it's a Legendary Lord, and you're going to get 50% of the Legendary Lord's experience after he's already topped out and not using that experience anyway, is going to every other Lord. So you're going to use him a whole lot throughout the campaign. Just a strong suggestion there. And then the last couple points that you have, I'm going to say that you spend them in those blue line skills that we didn't get on the initial pass. So I think that you should spend them here because that reduces the changing of the ways by 9%. At the point that you are in the campaign where you're spending the last couple points for Kairos, you're doing changing of the ways expenditures that are in the thousands of grimoires. So subtracting 9% off of that is a substantial decrease in the cost. So spend there. And then I would also go for the element of surprise, especially, again, not really for ambush, but just for the purposes of hiding that army so that you can then turn around and smash them up. If you enjoyed this video, then I would greatly appreciate it if you hit that subscribe button, because that will eventually allow me to monetize the channel after I reach the 1,000 subscriber threshold. And that should hopefully help us reach a greater audience, because we know that the videos that aren't monetized don't go nearly as far, and ultimately, hopefully, will help recoup some of the costs in making these videos. If you have feedback on this or any other video, then please sound off in the comment section down below. Let me know about it. I'd love to have a discussion with you. Now, as far as using this particular build, I think that the way that you run this most of the time is going to be to run the Fragment of Shyish, and you use that to get the maximum output. Fly Kairos ahead, as we said previously, smash them up with him and the various army abilities, and use the army to clean up. On your second battle, provided that you initiated the attack, you should almost always be the attacker, you will have the option to fight a second battle. Now, the thing about that is you could auto-resolve that battle, but you could, because this is Warhammer 3 and not Warhammer 2, and you can instantaneously switch equipment, you could switch over to the Fragment of Gyran. That'll give you all of the healing spells that you want, and then you can heal up all your single entities during the basically throwaway fight that will be the second battle. Food for thought. Thank you guys for watching, and hopefully we'll see you on a future video here at the Art of Save Scumming. Thank you very much.